Okay, hopefully everybody's been able to facilitate a sufficient shift from regular time to wartime, or daylight savings time if you might prefer to call it that. It's it's an imaginal time zone. It isn't real in any stretch of the imagination. It's convenient to the modern commercial side of the equation, or at least that's what it was considered along the way. It really is not real time. And since, as an astrologer, I'm dealing in celestial time, that's a very different animal. The the flavor of this particular week is there's a unique quality that comes across, or the bow of our ship is cutting into as we go into this week. Right off the bat, this is a chart from Monday. You'll notice I've shifted to a slightly different format, and that format is showing a chart based on the Spring Equinox Monday with in Koch house system, which is my preferred house system, and for my particular location. You know, I consider this relevant from the perspective of what I'm going to talk about today. Around the globe, you have to picture this Earth as this central dot here in the middle, or this central circle, and at 2:25 p.m. Pacific Daylight, imaginal time frame, this is what the chart looks like where I live. And there's a couple of degrees. I'll start out with 1 degree that I want to read the Sabian symbol for, which is the rising sign. Right here, 6 degrees of Leo. The constellations of stars shine brilliantly in the night sky. The power of basic spiritual values is the keynote, which refer to man's common humanity and to all enduring archetypes. A major flavor of this is permanence. That backdrop of stars that, surround our view of the heavens doesn't move very fast, doesn't change that often. It's in motion, but it's really, really slow. But it's the backdrop. Boardrop, above, below, on the sides. It is the stage scenario of where we exist. Further reading from this Sabian symbols that Dane Ridger put together in his astrological mandala book. The experience of the night sky with its multitude of stars, especially brilliant in all the countries from which astrology came, is just as basic and archetypal an experience as that of sunrise, full moon, and seasonal changes. We are talking about a seasonal change here, Monday, Spring Equinox. Every people on this earth has developed the concept of constellations, probably because of a need to find order in existence and to personalize everything that could be given a permanent form. Such personalizations can be called psychic projections, but the projection concept should be worked out both ways. If man projects his basic human nature upon the star-filled night sky, is it not just as logical to say that the universe projects its own forever evolving patterns of order upon human nature? In either case, we deal with archetypal factors which endure through a long series of generations. The nearly unchanging patterns of star groups are opposed to the sequence of ever-changing fashions and social ideals down here on Earth. I embellish those words just a little bit. But let's take a look. Here's the chart for the spring equinox here in our neck of the woods. Are part of the celestial dance factors at play. Oh, darn. I'm trying to get my phone to go off, but it's got different ideas in mind. Anyway, let's take a look at this chart. First of all, Leo rising, another fire sign. And, the rising sign in any chart is kind of like, it's a projection, the projector in a movie theater is shining something out to be observed. And that's what an ascendant is. And in this case, it's Leo. And Leo is about, taking center stage, or at least being in some position on the stage where something can be extolled, expressed, offered for consideration to the larger public venue. So, spring is not coming in on a light note. What else is going on here in this chart that might be worth paying attention to? Look here, we have like 4 planets and Chiron up here in the 9th house. The 9th house is the arena of... It's an arena that the invitation is put out to be inclusive of different cultural values that exist and may be vying for attention as perspectives that aren't generally considered on everybody's plate or table. There's an opportunity to, in this particular spring equinox, to make sure that we are paying attention to other cultural venues that are available to what? To perhaps enhance our own view of this dynamic human dance that we are about? Oh, yes. Yeah. It isn't all just about, hometown, homeboys, home kind of territory that is so friggin' important and the rest of the world can go to hell in a handbasket. Well, I believe that attitude has been tried for a while, and you can kind of see the, what shall we call it, the mess, the predicaments that we exist in on this planet right now. Not that kosher. There are issues on board that, we brought on ourselves by our closed minds. Can you hear that? Do you have thoughts, floating around in your head that say that the skin color of that other person is so friggin' different from me, I can't trust it. And yet, if one were to just take the time to sit down and have a meaningful conversation with this other person, no matter what the color of their skin, they might discover that, oh my goodness, here's another human being with visions and perspectives that I hadn't thought of before. Perhaps I might want to take a step back and readjust my aim to see what is going on this planet and who is in control and what do they want us to do that may or may not be to our benefit. Ninth house. Neptune, oh, the possibility for imagination, illusions to be on board. At the same time, however, the spiritual perspective of what is potential there has no limits. The sun. Yeah, this is the sun going into Aries. There's a vitality that the sun represents. There's an impulsive energy that Aries projects forth. There's opportunity to actually begin new things. This is what Spring Equinox is about. This is what Aries is about. There's a driving impulse to initiate something. Mercury very close to this solar entrance into Aries. What is your perspective? Mercury is our perspective. It infuses our conversations with things that we don't always necessarily know where they might come from. I throw this in because of that Neptunian factor being in play here in this ninth house, but more importantly, that Mercury in the ninth house in Aries, I want to have a conversation. And I'm not going to hold back on asking questions of anybody from whatever culture they're a part of as to what is your perspective on this situation that we exist here on planet Earth right now, and is it sustainable? Chiron. It's time for a healing. Is there a wounding? Yeah, there's always wounding. Sack. We, as a soul being incarnated here on planet Earth, and planet Earth and the soul, the oversoul perspective are not exactly, turning around to the same music that's playing. From the oversoul perspective, we as aspects, if you will, fractals of an oversoul, incarnate on Earth and inhabit a body that is going to have to live through the experiences that being on planet Earth instigates. Are there challenges? Oh, heck yes. Of course there are challenges, and the reason for the challenges is to test the mettle of the soul experience, to actually see, how effective is this particular soul journey that I am on going to evolve the version of soul awareness that I am going to be able to infuse the larger oversoul perspective with, from the lessons that I learn and respond to in this particular earth walk that I am about. Jupiter. Jupiter don't think small. Jupiter's the ruler of Sagittarius and Pisces, by the way. Jupiter. This is generally the ninth house is or has an overlay of Sagittarian flavor. So Jupiter here in this house, in Aries, there is a drive present that Jupiter's like, you can almost picture a take no prisoners kind of attitude to this, but not looking at it from a war-like perspective, more along the lines of I am broadcasting a question that is available to all those who can hear it to engage with one another at levels that you probably haven't quite considered just yet. Jupiter's always going for the more, for just beyond that level of the horizon that we know into the unknown. No, we probably don't understand other cultures. And why? Is it because we have tried so diligently and do not understand them? I think not. I think that we haven't tried. We haven't actually opened up and recognized that we are all human beings, no matter what culture we come from. And we have a mission as soul beings on this planet to engage with one another in a meaningful fashion and compare notes. I think that those who seem to occupy positions of authority, shall we say, on planet Earth, often in highly elevated economic scenarios, don't want us to compare notes with one another because it will undermine their ability to, spin tales of things that we need to be afraid of, to protect ourselves from those people from different cultures and things. And if we were to compare notes with one another amongst our different cultural perspectives, we would discover a similarity of what it is that we actually want from this living experience that our souls really desire, and more than desire, but came to accomplish as part of the growth factor of what it is to be here in this human environment. Speaking of those in control, 10th house, this is the arena of governance, rulership, the royalty of society. Well, ironically, the sun represents kingly, queenly, royalty perspectives. The sun has just gone into Aries in the 9th house. Are we willing enough to embrace a leader who comes along, who considers benefits to all of society, no matter where they come from on this planet, in a more harmonious fashion? There's a slightly different version of leadership that we don't see a lot of on planet Earth. What do we have going on here? We have Venus. What does it mean to interact with others? In conjunction with the north node of the sun, of the moon, opportunity, destiny, beckoning for a version of partnership that is available if we are willing, even at those levels of rulership and leadership, in all levels of that. That's not just governance. These are corporate levels. This is business. Are we going to take the opportunity to, in true Taurian fashion, make sure that the visions, the larger visions, the smaller visions, all visions point toward a concern for planet Earth that we live on, that are not just about how much I can get from it, but am I in tune with it? Is what I am about going to make this a better planet to live on? Let's throw some Uranian consideration into here. Uranian, sudden, abrupt changes. Yes, indeed it represents that, but it also represents the reason why those abrupt changes transpire, and that is to shake us up, to rattle our worlds to such an extent that we awaken. Uranus is about the great awakening process that we have available to us, to become enlightened soul beings. Our mission on planet Earth. The Great Awakener. It's calling. Can you hear its voice? Mars. Coming to the last few degrees of Gemini, where it's been for the last 7 months or so. Mars in Gemini in the 11th house. The 11th house, what significance does the 11th house have? These are special friends to us. These are groups of energetic souls that one might consider their cosmic tribe. And so Mars is, remember, ruler of Aries, Scorpio as well, but Aries, from the Aries perspective, since this is the beginning of the Aries dance that we're about, is that driving force to accomplish something. It's in Gemini. What is it that I want to say? What is it that I want to learn? What is it that I think? How is my perceptive quality? And does it translate effectively and easily enough into a group format that can enhance and imbue the group with a vision that is larger, more inclusive, more inviting for others to participate in? Let's take a look just really quickly at the Sabian symbol for this particular Mars degree, since this is kind of the ruler of this spring equinox. Through bankruptcy, ooh, doesn't that sound familiar? Society gives to an overburdened individual the opportunity to begin again. Here's a thought. The keynote. A release from unbearable pressures, freeing one for new tasks. Do you think it's time that perhaps some new tasks need to be invented? There's a lot of people that are in a discomforted state, we shall call it, that, seek for something different. If you look at the, just the general flavor of our modern Western society coming out of the 3 years of COVID experience that we've been going through, Many people had that opportunity to, you know, not do the things that they had been doing and had reflection time to determine if they really wanted to go back to doing those things that they were doing before. And a vast majority of people are saying, no way, why would I want to go back into the rat race? Get on that hamster wheel and have very minimal chance of attaining that carrot that's been dangled so freely out in front of us by those in control, saying, if you try hard enough and long enough, perhaps you might be able to get a bite from this carrot, and that will enhance your economic standing in the world. Folks, the economic standing in the world is so friggin' manipulated right now that the chances of that happening are very, very small. Those that currently have the resources are very reluctant to release them into the general populace. And they like that. They are in position to buy positions of control. Don't be fooled by that dangling carrot. There are many things on this planet that need and could be accomplished that have very little to do with the particular Western distribution system. Consumerism has been foisted upon us as being so very vital to our survival. And yet there are, we don't find very often the joy, the delight of actually engaging with one another and with Mother Nature more specifically. No, those few opportunities when we can eke out that extra time frame in order to get out into nature. Can you feel that? That breath of clean air. Very rare commodity on planet Earth these days. Just like clean, fresh water that you could just dip your hands into and drink from like we used to be able to. No, the pollution of our modern society is not benefiting this planet upon which we dwell, and thus ourselves as dwellers here and now. Wow, I didn't want to go into that much for this particular chart, but, I did. There are other things happening this week. Let's get back to the regular chart. Darn, this is going to be a long one if I'm not careful. It's Monday. We already talked about Monday and the chart significations of this. You can kind of see also that we're getting near the next new moon. Well, the next new moon is happening right here at 0 degrees of Aries tomorrow, Tuesday. This is just bumping it ahead to Tuesday. Consider that the moon moves at a degree every 2 hours. We're 3 degrees ahead of the sun here, which is still at 0 degrees Aquarius, 3 degrees, so 6 hours before 2 o'clock in the afternoon, puts us at around, what do we call it, around 6 in the morning? Yeah, so around 6 in the morning on Tuesday, we have our next new moon at 0 degrees of Aries, the first degree of the zodiac. New moons, a time to set intentions, and depending on where that Aries 0 degrees moment is in your chart, will have a bearing on what is that impulse of life that beckons your attention in setting an intention that is going to unfold appropriately for how you want to play this particular new moon moment on the spring equinox. Are you tuned into this beginning energy that, starts the world, starts the turning, gets that ball rolling about what life has in store for us in the coming year. This is the kind of energy that's on the table for setting our intentions for this particular new moon, right there at the very first degree of Aries. Sabian symbol for that particular degree, a woman just risen from the sea. A seal, S-E-A-L, is embracing her. Emergence of new forms of the potentiality of consciousness. Do you hear the wake-up call in that? Are you willing? Are you ready to actually take that step into what might appear to be unknown, as most things are when we enter them? Soul adventure. This is a soul adventure that we are embarking upon, and let's do it together. Not just as an individual. Yes, as an individual, we're going to make that determination depending on where that 0 degrees Aries falls in our chart. But make no mistake about it, we're all in that same boat. We may have slightly different perspectives, but this begs us to have conversations with one another so that what it is that we can accomplish will enhance the living experience of not just us as human beings, but all of life. It beckons that participation. This is that Aries epitomal moment that's saying, wake up. Be alive in this moment. Don't try and cut yourself off from the vitality of the living experience. Oh, we got things happening. And, that moon coming into Aries, you can kind of see there's a little bit of an Aries flavor here going on in this particular chart. Sun, Moon, Mercury, Chiron, Jupiter, and, the midheaven is here, which basically just means that the sun is just a little bit past the highest point of the chart, noon. So it's in the 9th house, which we already know because we looked at that chart for the beginning of the year. There's an impulse there. Life is beckoning us to participate with one another at levels that we may or may not have recognized as potential. Tuesday. I don't really have a lot going on Tuesday. The planets are still doing their dance. There's still a lot of Aries stuff going on. But Thursday, I would say Wednesday. Thursday, this is a biggie. I'm an Aquarius. Pluto shifts into Aquarius for a couple of brief months, testing the waters, but a lot of people think of Aquarius as a water sign, but in reality it is an air sign. People confuse the water because what it does is it's like the water cycle on planet Earth. It's the air factor, those clouds actually being in place, that as water evaporates up into the atmosphere, it is that energy of the evaporation and conglomeration into clouds so that it might rain back down onto the earth. You can kind of sense that there's a potential watery nature to that, but what we're talking about is an air nature. Aquarius is a energy of thought, communication, electronics, high-speed electronics and communication. And it is the dissemination of that information level that Aquarius deals with. And it rains it down on all of us all the time. It's an air energy. Pluto coming into this air energy is saying, as in only Pluto could, is, are you paying attention to where this might lead? Or perhaps more particularly, are you tuned into factors that have been at work, that have been pulling the wool over your eyes through the dissemination of information that wasn't exactly copacetic and true and honest? Pluto's purpose is to dig down deep into any substance that it touches and discover things that have been buried. And then once discovered, to percolate them back up to the surface and expose them so that something new has an opportunity to put in an appearance, because we're being given insight into those things that are no longer relevant to us and are ready to be jettisoned from the equation of life because they're just not right. Pluto going to Aquarius. Here's our group energy again. Here's that, cosmic celestial tribe that we have the potential of hanging with. There are characters. What was that? Oh yes, from Harry Potter, the Dementors. Their idea of sucking the energy out of you so that you cannot see what's going on. Oh, the Dementors are loose on this planet right now, spinning tales of imagination that are really not that important to us, but they make it seem so. Can you hear that? With Pluto going to Aquarius for the next 20 years, these kind of questions should be percolating deep within you, or maybe at your surface levels, to remind yourself and others of what is in play and what the opportunities of newness that are waiting for you to open up enough space within the context of who you are to allow something new to come in. It isn't like you necessarily have to invent it. It already exists. It's just waiting for the opportunity for you to provide it the room, the latitude for its presence to percolate through you. Welcome Pluto to Aquarius. It will be there until, June. Then it's going to go back into Capricorn for the rest of the year. And then next year, it's going to go into Aquarius. It's going to do this bounce back and forth between Aquarius and Capricorn for a couple of years. 2025, it's going to move into Aquarius full time. Not going back to do the dance in Capricorn and give people the permission that have existed in that Capricornian rulership zone to continue to try and pull the wool over our eyes. Oh, no, not. What else do we have going on this week? We have one more shift to consider, and it has to do with Mars. You can kind of see it down here, 29 degrees of Gemini. It's about to shift into Cancer. And people go, wow, Mars, fire sign, Aries, not going to be comfortable in a water sign. Lest we forget, Mars also is the traditional ruler of Scorpio, a water sign, the next water sign, as a matter of fact. So one thing that traditional astrology, Hellenistic astrology, whatever you want to call it, they have different significations, shall we say, for how planets sit within particular signs. Mars is the triplicity ruler of both the day and the night charts. while in Cancer. It is in fall while it's in Cancer, which is, the fall or detriment, not detriment. The fall is, you see, it's kind of like you've fallen into a well. Picture this. You're at the bottom of the well and you're yelling for help to get out of the well, of course, and no one can hear you, And yet, ironically, it has that triplicity rulership, both day and night charts, that connection to Scorpio, who, if you're consistent in your projection of needing assistance at the bottom of the well, might mysteriously show up. There's Scorpio, that Mars factor, might mysteriously be drawn to your particular well you're in to give you assistance in clambering back up out of the depths. It's not an entire negative consideration. I say this because part of the soul development actually requires the necessity of being in those deep well situations periodically to actually go deeper into the investigation of what does my soul really mean to me? Am I in tune with what soul stands for? This is a question you have to ask yourselves. Are you willing to do the work? And it is work, to be able to recognize a aspect of yourself that you came to develop while here on planet Earth in a fashion that living in modern society is going to do everything in its power to dissuade you from participation at that level. Can you tighten your belt enough to be able to ferret out, where does truth lie? I probably talked enough for this particular week, more than I had anticipated, but there is a lot going on this week. This image that I have in the background, this is my newest piece of artwork painting that I have done. There's a lot of factors to it. I'll get out of the way so you can actually see it. Take it in, and with any piece of artwork, remember, it's always in the eye of the beholder. What do you perceive as potential here? I'll give you a hint. There are no wrong answers. It's an investigation into what inspired me to do this. The Jupiter-Chiron conjunction. And I've talked about these conjunction already. Think attunement.